Apuan, event organizer for our local Candlelight Vigil, Colorado Springs. I am also a former Colorado State Representative and an activist. On behalf of the Colorado Media Justice Foundation, which is hosting this event, thank you for being a part of this nationwide effort as we raise our collective voice and implore the government not to use military strike against Syria. This event is part of a National Day of Action being organized by national advocacy organizations including MoveOn, Credo Action, Progressive Change, and Win Without War. Similar vigils are taking place in over 225 cities across this country tonight. We're here today because as we speak, our nation is on the verge of airstrikes against Syria. If Congress allows to authorize this bombing, we may find ourselves entering a very slippery slope because what may start as a limited military intervention has the potential to devolve into another war into the Middle East. Aren't 2 wars enough? Yes! Though unspeakable atrocities have occurred in the 2-year-long Syrian civil war, that doesn't justify U.S. military intervention, which could lead to more bloodshed. While we unequivocally condemn any use of chemical weapons, along with continued indiscriminate killing of civilians and other violations of international humanitarian law, military airstrikes are not the answer. Rather than bringing an end to the violence that has already cost more than 100,000 lives, they threaten to widen the vicious civil war in Syria and undermine the prospects to de-escalate the conflict and reach a negotiated settlement. The administration continues to say it is not seeking authorization for the war, but in the last week and a half, Secretary of State John Kerry has waffled on whether there would be boots on the ground, and we're now hearing about a no-fly zone and training of rebel forces. As of last week, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee seems to be considering an outright goal of regime change. The risk that this intervention will spiral out of control is precisely why those airstrikes have to be stopped before they begin. It's a huge responsibility and a decision which will have far-reaching consequences. Too many times in the past, members of Congress helped the U.S. rush into war without carefully weighing in all the options and asking necessary questions. What is the exit plan? Will this save civilian lives? How do we define victory? With no clear exit strategy, U.S. military action could have unintended consequences. It could destabilize the situation and worsen the conflict, forcing us deeper into quagmire. These questions and more need answers before Congress votes. We all need to stand up and demand answers. We need to do everything we can to keep us from making the same mistakes that led us to the war in Iraq. We cannot afford another ill-conceived war in the Middle East. Polls have shown that this is not a left or a right issue. The majority of Americans agree with our position. There should be no unilateral military intervention in Syria. On the eve of President Obama's primetime speech about his plans for Syria tomorrow night, we are here to demonstrate that we won't be won by rhetoric. To be clear, we are here tonight holding this vigil to stand firm opposition to launching airstrikes against Syria. But we're also here because we know we can stop this intervention. The air of inevitability being projected by the media and Washington is nothing but hot air. Congress is split on this issue and may even be leaning on our way. That's why we're standing in solidarity tonight, and we'll continue with our calls, our petitions, and every other effort it takes to stop these strikes against Syria. We have confirmed participants guided by their faith and conscience who will be sharing some words of reflection and offering songs for peace later. Now let us take a moment of silence for the lives that have already been lost in Syria and the many more deaths that the U.S. strikes will cause. Let us have a moment of silence. Well, like I said, we haven't really exhausted all means that's possible at our fingertips, and that includes political and humanitarian means. As United States citizens, we need to contact our members of Congress to make sure that we do not get into another slippery slope because our actions may have unintended consequences in the Middle East, and it won't de-escalate the conflict, it'll just worsen the situation.
Would you be for like reciprocal sanctions or any other?
Absolutely. Economic sanctions are also a good way to stop this civil war, which we haven't really tried yet at this point.
I heard you talk about it quite well.
Well, we want to make sure that we have answers to all the questions that we have. We haven't heard anything about an exit strategy. We don't know if civilian lives will be lost because of this, and we do not know how we define victories, so it really spells a quagmire to me. Well, we're going to set a precedent on, international law, and the whole world is watching the United States, and we're just not the police of the world.